right. Welcome back to a Family Business Podcast. Although today we're missing one of our three family members. We have two of our non-blood family members here, Sarah DeWulf and Pieter Hanson. And we are commonly lovingly known amongst ourselves as Lunch and Learn. We're going to explain that. And we're also just going to, last week, you guys heard Brad and I's story to how we got to Real and what made us make the move. And Pieter and Sarah are a huge part of that. And obviously we all made this move together. So we're going to start this podcast with a little bit of a journey, I think, of how Pieter and Sarah got to the point of why or where that you kind of knew it was time for a change. And then, how we all came together in this crazy little thing. So whoever wants to start.
Well, I'll go first, I guess. So when I was at our previous broker, I wasn't too happy with the way things are going. And at one point, our CEO came to our office to say hello, which she never does, and walking around the offices saying hi. And I said to her, hey, have you met my assistant? And she goes, oh, yeah, I've met her a bunch of times. I'm like, oh, okay. Her office seems to be right next to her, but she still didn't even just reach over and say hi. She left. Kara came over in my office and said, I've never met her in my life. Oops. So I kind of thought to myself, already unhappy, but I kind of thought to myself, what am I doing here with these people? So I thought about who did I respect in the company and who might be somebody that I would want to get some advice on or give some intel to on what I was planning to do, because I had already reached out to another brokerage firm in town. And so I called Sarah and we went to lunch, and my timing was excellent because you guys had already kind of gotten together and were thinking about doing some things. And the BOEYEs had already been going to all these conferences and finding the ideal broker or the broker that they thought that they'd want to work with. So that's how I kind of went down that journey with Sarah and then with the BOEYEs. And then once my application was approved to be your partners, we started moving down this road, which for me was and has been and will be life-changing going forward.
So take me back for a minute, though, Pieter. I want to just kind of dive in a little bit. Like, when you say that you were already unhappy with your previous brokerage, like, what was it that was, obviously that would upset me for real if someone doesn't know my name, but like there had to be things prior to that when it came to your business that you felt you were lacking, or what was kind of some of those thoughts that brought you to where you were?
It was just the way the brokerage firm was run to begin with. All the agent events were so center focused on a core group of people, and it didn't happen to be agents. It happened to be owners and support people. And I thought that it should be more agent centric. And I felt like the training that was provided was very duplicated. It was always seemed to be the same stuff. And the person giving the training didn't know as much as I did. At least I didn't think they did. And I don't know everything, but I felt like I would have been a better person to run the meeting than the person that was running the meeting. And I liked those people as people, but I just was not happy with paying all this money to get nothing in return. I mean, I would go to Sarah and the BOEYEs before I would go to the broker or the company itself, for advice. Mm-hmm. And I mean, not that you shouldn't be able to lean on your fellow agents in your office. You should be, but you should be comfortable reaching out to the broker too. And every time you reach out to the broker, all I got was a frown and a sigh and oh, what are you doing in my office again?
No, that's not good. Well,
ridiculous.
Part of the problem there, though, Pieter, is you have to remember is like it was a big, huge office, and the broker was in an office with nobody else in there. So that we'll get into a little bit later. But, we can relate to that. So, Sarah, take us back to when little story. When we first, we'll tell this, but when we first started talking to Sarah a little bit, one of the lunches that we were having, this was before Lunch and Learn. This was just lunch. And Sarah made the comment about, if you guys ever wanted to go somewhere, I'd be down with, discussing it and doing something with you. And I remember Brad and I were like, what? I thought she was completely happy where she was. So why don't you take us back to how you came to that realization? Because it wasn't just at lunch with us.
No. Yeah. So to take you way back, I got licensed in 2010 and I'm a second generation realtor, and my dad was managing broker of our previous office. And so our plan was to always open our own brokerage together, like a small boutique type of office. And he passed away unexpectedly in 2019. And then COVID hit and I got pregnant back to back, and it was just a hectic time in the real estate world. And then I started looking at, wow, I'm paying a lot of money to this brokerage and I'm not sure what I'm getting in return, because most of my clients by that point wanted to work with me and they didn't care what sign was in the yard. So when the BOEYEs and I started to go to lunch a couple times, I think it was maybe the second or third lunch that it came up that we started, maybe we should explore some options. And then Peter's divine timing, I think, was, hey, let's go to lunch. And at that point, I didn't say anything. But Peter said, I'm going to go to another brokerage in town. And I said, well, don't do that. I can't say much yet. But so then I called Andrea and Brad, and then I think there was a meeting here. And
oh yeah, let's tell that. We'll tell that story.
Was before Lunch and Learn. We were, I remember called. We were in a corner booth at Monarch, and you said, hey guys, you probably should know this, but Pieter Hanson is looking at going to another brokerage that's, set up generally the same way as the one that we were at. And we're like, oh no, hold on. So we went back to the office and we said, what are you doing right now, Peter? And he's like, I just have to be somewhere like in an hour and a half.
No, you were going, I remember specifically. This was like about 2:00, maybe 1:30. You just said, I just have to go to the grocery store so I can get stuff to grill for Julie tonight. But other than that, I have a free few hours.
I was like, let's go over to our house and we have to tell you something. And you're like, okay, now? And we're like, yeah.
And so do you remember what the first thing is we did when you got here?
No.
We got out a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
We opened a bottle of wine, Pinot Noir, at like 2:00 in the afternoon on a weekday. We don't ever do that. And so then that's how it started. But I got to share this little tidbit because I wish this was recorded, because this is the best part of the story. Is that, we tell Peter, we're like, hey, we heard you had lunch with Sarah and this is what we heard's going on. And your face was almost like, crap, am I in trouble? Like, what's going to happen here? Like, and so we're like, well, we have something to tell you. We're going to leave where we are and we're going to do our own thing. And Sarah's coming with us and we're all doing this. And, and you had a vest on at the time and you stood up, you took off the vest, you threw it on the floor. You said, I'm in, I'm effing in. Mm-hmm. When are we going? I thought you two bled, blah, 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 colors of our previous brokerage. I never thought I could tell you, I cannot believe this is happening. When are we going?
And then the hardest part was
guardian angels on earth is all I can tell you.
And the hardest part was, remember when we were meeting all those times, either over here or Lunch and Learn, which we'll get to, is you two were always like, let's go now. Let's go now. And it was hard to stay where we were at once we learned about where we were going. And just a brief, not to get to the end of it, but it's been even better than I had anticipated. But anyway, let's go back to...
Well, I remember, Sarah, and I want you to expand on this, but so like after that lunch where you learned about Peter and then we knew, told Peter what was going on, we had said to you, hey, because you definitely thought, let's open our own little brokerage, right? You had some names picked out and everything. And I'm like, Brad's like, nope, not doing it. My dad said nope. And you're like, oh, and I could tell for a minute. I remember Brad and I thinking, well, shoot, maybe she's just going to go open our own brokerage and we're not going to do this together, right? And then we're like, hey, this is what we think we want to do. We do want to have a brick and mortar in our own office, but we want to be powered and backed. I shouldn't say powered, backed by this brokerage. Here's the link. Go research it. So you go home and you can tell us what transpired, but I remember the text I got 24 hours later.
Well, I knew that if we were making a big change, it was going to be a big splash locally, and also it changes the course of our lives. So I wanted to make sure that it was the right fit. And so I went home and started watching every YouTube video and following every person I could on Instagram, and immediately was thinking, this seems too good to be true, but no brainer. I know where we're going. And so it was a lot of research and learning more about the company, and the more I learned about Real, the more I wanted to be there. I wanted to jump in. And I think Peter and I were, once the decision was made, ready to go. And it was,
we had to hold him back.
Yeah,
that's exactly right.
The timing all worked out perfectly, but it was a hard secret to keep for a long time. And definitely way better than I think any of us expected.
I would 100% agree. Do you remember, Peter, we were out at our house here on the deck and you were like, there has to be some catch. I mean, it can't be this good, right? I mean, that was...
Well, I didn't do all the research that Sarah did and that you guys obviously did for years. But one thing that I did do is I put my faith in you. And you have to put your faith in something, whether it's your faith or your partners or whatever. And I just didn't have the desire to sit there and watch all the YouTube videos. I thought if it's good enough for these guys, it's good enough for me.
You weren't the deciding factor for Peter.
Right. No, that's very true. So let's get into Lunch and Learn, like how that all started. So we probably ought to go back to the very beginning. So Andrea briefly touched on it, but we had Sarah out to eat lunch probably three or four times. And meeting one was just like, how are things going? You know, all the rest of that. And it was great lunch. And we didn't really get into much of anything. Meeting two, we started to talk about what we didn't like about the current company that we were at and the items that could be improved. And then I think by about meeting three, Sarah kind of understood why we kept having lunch. And I can't remember what you exactly said, but we agreed that if we were going to do something, we were going to do it with each other. Just that all the respect that we've had. And just to go back real quickly with Andrea, when you got into the business so years ago now, Sarah, I remember Andrea saying to me, she's going to be a star. And
Aww.
I said, I think you're right. And Andrea hasn't always hit all these correctly, but
that's not true. I think I'm 10 out of 10.
She
of who
definitely
was quitting, who would get fired, who would get
definitely
starting with you, Brad.
Yeah, right. She definitely hit that one on the nose. And as it just kept going along, we were like, okay, not only are you a great realtor, but you're a great person. And that's the kind of person that we wanted to go into our own business with. And I was kind of on the same page with you, actually, Peter, that I kind of figured you'd always be at Melfa.
That's what I was going to say.
At the old brokerage.
Yeah.
And so there was no reason to even approach you. So we were kind of on the same thing. But then once I had heard that you were leaving the old brokerage, I was like, oh my gosh, we've got to get him to come with us.
Well, let's not forget the brokerage that you're going to switch to before you knew what was going on the backside. They were going to paint you a new office.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yep.
I paid for my own new carpet.
And they were going to charge you plenty for it too. But to go really back to it too, as well as you, Peter, I mean, when you start anything like this, which was a huge risk, you want to go in it with good people, and you are as well. And that was one of the main reasons why we were comfortable making the plunge. I mean, if you really think about it, I had a relationship with this company since 1993. 2 or 3.
Really, since you were born? Basically.
Not quite. I mean, they own their own company for a while, but yeah, I mean, it was a very tough call that I was giving up a lot in relationships and just comfort level, right? I mean, that's what I was used to my whole career in 23 years, but we quickly figured out that we needed to do something. So then we came up with Lunch and Learn once we knew that
so the reason
Sarah was on board.
Yeah, so the reason why, going back for one moment, so when we were which we talked about this on last week's podcast, is that we were at FubCon when we really honed in on Real. And I remember, and Sarah, I hope you have this picture somewhere on your phone, because I think we should bust it out at some point, because, we're nearing our 2-year, move to Real here. But I remember Brad and I were like, thinking about, okay, what he said, like, who's people that we would, like, what's a know, like, and respect or whatever, trust, and think they do a great business. Of course your name came. And I remember taking a picture on the dance floor at the closing party at FubCon and sending it to you going, you should be here. And I'm like, that was my first seed, right? They say to plant seeds. And then Peter, I agree with Brett. I mean, we never thought in a million years we were like, well, Peter would be awesome, but he's never leaving there. Like he's going to be there forever. But Lunch and Learn came about because once we were all, like this, Peter and Sarah, like, were ready to go, and we would have to have meetings like pretty regularly just to keep them at bay, so they didn't like burst out a door and leave. And one day I realized that my email was synced because it was my previous brokerage's email, which FYI, if you're at a brokerage and your previous brokerage owns your email, you should probably figure out a way to start backing that up and get out of that system, because it's not good when you leave. But anyway, and I realized that they were syncing to the calendar, and I realized that these meetings were going on the calendar, and they just said Peter, Sarah, Brad, and Andrea, and it was like meeting. And I'm like, shoot, at some point they're going to look at this and go, why are these four meeting all the time? So we decided to call them Lunch and Learns. That's how the name came.
And it's still in the text message chain. It's called Lunch and Learn.
Yes. So when we're at those Lunch and Learns, Peter and Sarah, because, Brad and I talk about these things on a regular basis at our podcast. Like, one of the things that for us, when we started exploring Real, just all the things, right, that started clicking, right? But like, what was the deciding, I know obviously you started researching Real and you're like, I'm in, right? But like, what was the deciding factor for you, or what was like that pivotal moment where you're like, this is it. This is so much better than where I am, and why, right? When you look at your future business and your past business and where you wanted to go, like, give me some key things of why Real is different.
I could give probably 20 of them. But the biggest being that I knew I love to sell real estate, and I definitely don't see myself not doing that anytime soon. But there were agents in my old office that were 90 years old that still had to be selling houses. And when you're on that type of model, you just can't ever get off the hamster wheel. And I knew that as an entrepreneur myself, I loved that Real is so entrepreneur focused. It's not just about buying and selling houses, although we love that, and that's the main bread and butter. I liked that there was other options that I could build and grow. And aside from that, it was the leadership. Just watching Sharon and Tamir and just being in the trenches with us was huge.
Yeah.
And being really in the know, in the trenches. I mean, their insight was always ahead of everybody else's, and the messages that they delivered were so pertinent and so on point that you knew that the company was being run by people who knew something about selling real estate.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
which isn't always the case.
It really isn't. And you remember when the law changes last August, I still to this day feel that nobody was more prepared, and still is, than our company. I mean, they rolled this all out. We knew exactly what was coming, and still a lot of agents can't get the grasp of what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. And one of the coolest things I think is that, going back to Sarah, what you and your dad had talked about, having your own brokerage someday, right? The other thing that just is so fantastic about Real is that it allowed us to have a brick and mortar, have an office, have a team of agents that we're working with and collaborating with, and yet still have that support system on the backside. So you're not doing all of the stuff you don't want to do. You're just doing the fun stuff, right? And I think that was a big thing, right, in our decision-making process. And I think we're just so blessed with what we have. Now, I do remember when we were having our lunch and learn and we were deciding on office space, there was a big discussion about how big that space should be. You guys want to expand a little bit on that discussion and why we decided where we are?
So I think from the size standpoint is we were contemplating what size we wanted, and our business model doesn't support a big bricks and mortar because it's a different agent. It's a technology-based company, and people work from their car. They work from home. They work from the beach. They work from the golf course. They work from wherever. So to have an office with 60 or 70 cubicles and 5 or 10 or 15 offices that are occupied 10% of the time did not seem to make sense to me. And I think we all kind of agreed that, hey, let's give them a place to plug and play, but we don't need to put them up overnight,
Yeah, agree. And I think it's real estate of the future. In 1980, everyone was in the office and
in their cubicles.
Yes. And
the real top agents were in their office.
Along with the MLS book.
Right. I was around then.
And all the keys and all the stuff.
Yep.
So I think what the power of Real and just setting ourselves up for the future has been amazing. And in the beginning, I don't know that I really took it all in, I guess. And now from the outside, looking back to 2 years ago when we kind of started all of this, it was, why would we pay for so much overhead when agents aren't there? The successful and the good agents are out golfing, showing houses, doing all the fun stuff.
Actually talking to people, right?
Yes, right. And you can get a contract signed from anywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, I love that we went small and not huge on the office space.
Yeah. So I want to touch briefly on why I chose Real. One, because you guys did. But two, because
that's how we all pick good wine too. We send each other bottles and we like it. Yeah.
There's no bad wine. But
only the bottle that's empty.
I would agree with that, Peter. My wife is a little pickier than I am about wine, but I think most wine is really good.
It might not be good wine, but it's only bad if the bottle's empty.
There you go. There you go. Sarah touched on leadership, and I think leadership is super important when you're trying to support a lifestyle and a business. So to have that leadership from Real was super important. But for me, and this is going to make you guys laugh, it was the technology that they offer. And I knew you would laugh because I'm not a technology guy, but I know
you're more of a technology guy than you think.
The people that are growing in real estate and the people that are embracing it are going to be successful in the future are the people that are embracing all this technology. And we didn't get anything at our old brokerage firm. And it's not necessarily their fault. They couldn't scale like, with 800 agents in our MLS and 200 agents in their brokerage like Real can with 25,000 agents and growing. So I thought this is the wave of the future. And even if I'm not around, I want to be associated with something. If I'm going to put my money into sustaining a business and keeping it going until it starts thriving, I want to be in the business that's going to be sustainable into the future and not the same old business model that I was doing.
Yeah. And it's hard, especially in the Midwest, right? We all get really comfortable with things. And I do think that's the reason why the old school brokerages are still around and they're doing well is it's comfort zone, right? And we got out of our comfort zone, but it's been the best decision we've ever made. And like you said, Peter, the technology is incredible. And that word is scary, especially to older agents. More seasoned agents. Is older the right word? But what's neat about Real is that it's easy technology too, right? I mean, you have Rezen. I mean, you have all these deals here that are easy to use, which a lot of the times, a lot of technology gets overcomplicated and then nobody uses it. I mean, we've tried some programs out that aren't Real programs that were too complicated.
You mean we or your wife made you?
You, and I think Peter looked at it for about a week and is like, I'm not doing
that
this.
Program. I forgot about that.
So you don't want to overcomplicate things, but that's what they do nicely is that the technology is usable too, which makes it much easier.
Easier than I thought. Because when we're all busy real estate agents. And so when we left in June, which, maybe wasn't the best time of year to leave with how busy we are and what we left
got
on the
outed.
table. Yes. We should have maybe moved that date up like Peter and I were thinking, but that's fine. It all worked out fine.
Hindsight 2020, I don't disagree now.
But though I was worried that, okay, how are we going to adapt to all this technology and we wanted to keep just a well-oiled machine moving, that I was worried there would be a huge learning curve going into all of Real's technology. And I thought we would have to watch a lot of videos to learn how to do this. And really, we jumped right in and it's so easy that we didn't even have any learning curve.
Yeah. Well, and if you remember too, that part of that is because, people have this misnomer about cloud brokerages, right? Like Karen Cooper says on one of her podcasts, like that was one of her things too. Like, how is this going to be? And we were joking that like one of our big concerns was our broker. Like, where's our broker going to be if they're not right here with us? And we talk to our Illinois and our Iowa broker now more than we did at our previous brokerage. And they're just great resources and very much committed to making sure that we succeed. So I think that was a big change for all of us.
Yeah, it's totally changed. Like you just mentioned, Peter, at the beginning of the podcast, is you no longer have to walk into an office to talk to your broker. They're right there. I mean, it's the way that it's changed is a lot of people can't wrap their head around it until you're in it. I can absolutely get a hold of my broker now quicker than I could at the old company if they weren't in the office and I wasn't in the office. So that's been a holdback for some people is where do I get the support from? And that's what I love that what we've built is that we have more of a hybrid, right? I mean, where we have an office, we have that culture in the office. Some people are made to just work on their own. Most realtors are people. And I do really think that an environment like we have created at our office is huge for the agents. I mean, I feel the energy there.
I don't want to turn this into a commercial for Real, but I
why not?
But I feel like saying
you're doing people a disservice if you don't.
You should not throw a blanket over the word cloud brokerages because Real is is so different in so many ways than the other cloud brokerages that are losing agents drastically every month, and we're gaining agents drastically every month. So,
agree.
I agree, and I think that it's just we talk about this a little bit. Is that the problem is that people have that picture painted in their mind. I mean, we were all those people, right? I mean, if we didn't, we would have went sooner probably, right? I mean, we explored the other things that were out there very in depth. We explored the EXPs, the Compass, the what's the, not really the one that came after us, but I mean, it was not the right fit, right? And it's kind of going back to what Brad said, and it's like once you see real, you can't unsee it. And it goes back to you guys, the minute that, I mean, Brad and I don't know why probably Brad's, deep family connection to that company. Like, it was like, we knew we needed to go, but it's like, okay, how do we mitigate, what it's going to cost us to leave? That was a big concern. And I think I want to speak to that a little bit right now. And you guys' story is like, I mean, I remember like, cause they kept half of our commission when we left on our deals. Yeah.
More than.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And made up new rules.
Yeah.
That's fine.
For some people that 50% became more than 50%. But anyway, we digress. But the crazy part is we all said after that first year, oh my gosh, like even though we lost that money to them, we still came out ahead. Sarah, I remember you doing your spreadsheet. Do you remember that and calling all of us and saying, you remember that?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yes. I guess from the money side of things, we knew as we left that it was going to be significantly better. And I think when you start looking at a model like Real, and specifically Real, and you think, how this is too good to be true. How is this real?
Like, how do they make money?
No pun intended. Yeah. But then being on the other side now, it's like, oh my gosh, the grass really is greener. And we were just in the Stone Ages for 20 years and didn't know that any of this really existed. And I think, like all of us, we've looked at other brokerages, and over the years you have a managing broker call and you might go to lunch just to talk. And like Andrea said, there just was never anything that I thought, because we're all
really
very
a lateral
loyal people,
move, right? I mean, that's all that they really were. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the timing of all of this, even back to me and Peter becoming friends, we were in a development that kind of went south.
It's still selling.
Yes. And at the time it stung a little bit on how hard that we worked for that and kind of got screwed over. But in the end, it really all led us to each other. Because otherwise I wouldn't have really known Peter. And it's just funny when you look back on how things play out, or why, like they say, everything happens for a reason.
For sure. Yeah. And going back, really, that loyalty thing, like you had mentioned, how long did Dad work at the old brokerage?
20 years. Yeah.
So, and that in the back of your head, I mean, that's probably what kept you there a long time too, is that you're a loyal person and you didn't want to let anybody down. But at some point in your real estate career, you have to look out for yourself and not worry about everybody else. And that's what we did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just simply a better decision for our family. And thank God we did.
Absolutely. And what's great too is I was just, while this is on the top of my head, one of the things I remember about Brian was how good of a trainer that he was at the old company. And that's one of the things that I really think in the real estate industry, just in general, that we've lost. So that's one of the aspects I was worried about at Real, right? I was like, the old company, we weren't getting a lot of training, and not that I needed basic training. I needed training for how we move this to the next level, right? Mm-hmm. Which we didn't get there. Real constantly has training programs. They have conferences. They have all these things with agents all around the country who are way better agents than I will ever be. And you just get all these ideas from all over the country, which is cool. And they're willing to share. And that starts with culture up at the top, right?
Yeah, how we talk about this, like our old brokerage or some of the other traditional models. I mean, they say, oh, we all work together, but I mean, we've shared our experience. What's your experience and how that actually works? Like, do you work together for a common goal? Like, what's some real, for anybody who's sitting there thinking, well, I think this Real sounds like a real good idea, but I'm I'm scared, right? Like I've been where I've been and, how could this be that different? And, I'm number one at my company and whatnot. Like, what do you say to them? Why did you make the decision? Because Sarah, the year we left, correct me if I'm wrong, you were number one at the previous brokerage that year, right? At what age? Let's refresh this for everybody.
30. How old am I now? 38. So 36.
I don't know how old I am. So at least I do because I'm turning 50 this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you were like literally like,
yeah.
It's one of those things like, hey, I'm here, right? Like, and I'm sure people are like, what in the world? I mean, something must be going on there that she's leaving, with where she's at.
Yeah. So back to when I got licensed, my dad trained me, and I feel very fortunate that now I realize that not everyone was trained like I was, but I was assigned a mentor who was not my dad, and she was supposed to kind of tool me around and show me how she did things. And I will never forget, she said, I'm going to show you some things, but I can't show you everything because I don't want you to steal my marketing ideas. And I thought, what? That's just one example of it wasn't a collaborative culture. Yeah. It was, here's how things have been done for the past 100 years, and we're not going to change, and we don't care about technology taking over, and we don't care about our agents' pocketbooks. And I remember my dad for years, even before he retired from management, he kept telling them, you can't keep cutting from the agents or the agents are going to leave you. Yeah. And warned for years, and then he passed, and look what happened.
Well, and it's amazing going back to Real, how they keep adding things, right? Mm-hmm. They're not taking anything away. They actually add more and more. And a lot of people don't realize that Real makes a little bit of money on the brokerage side, but a lot of it's on the tech side.
Yeah.
And like a lot of people ask, like, if they have that low of splits, like how is that even possible? Well, that's how is they have investors, and they're publicly traded on the NASDAQ. So there's a lot more revenue streams there than these traditional brokerages have. So that allows them to give their agents more.
So here's a crazy question, Peter. Do you think that, had you and Sarah not, worked together, and then, all this obviously transpired, the divine intervention the way it did, do you think you'd be at the brokerage that was painting the office for you that you were going to move to still?
Probably, because I was looking for a change, whether it's this, tomato, I was looking for a tomato and I was at a tomato. So I probably would I have been happy there? Probably not in long term, but my career path is slightly different than the three of yours, because I won't be doing this as long as you guys will be doing this. So I could have gutted it out for another 10 years or whatever, but it didn't happen that way.
Yeah. What a blessing, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. And I just look at where we're at as an office and where we're at as a company too, as in Real. I mean, just the growth has been just amazing. It's not a hard deal to sell to other agents that, in Real, quite honestly, they don't want you to sell it. They want them to realize it, basically. Right. And the
word biggest, real is in everything. Have you guys noticed this?
Yeah. Yeah. But the biggest deal with Real is that they want you to sell real estate. This is not a recruiting company, right? And that's what was attractive when we joined too, was that they actually had top producing agents all over the place, and they were growing like crazy, and they still are. What is it, 1,000 agents a month, basically, that they've been growing over the last year.
Yeah, when we joined, like 2 years ago, they were at like 8. I think when we first discovered it, right? Like really discovered it, they were around 8,000. Yeah. And then
it was about 12 when we joined. Yeah.
And now they're just over 26,000, I think.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you look like you had something to say there, Sarah.
I was going to say one thing that Real talks about from the leadership side is that they're always looking for ways to make our lives better. And that's an easy thing to say, but not prove. And really, I'm getting nervous.
Peter's taking Sarah's picture in the middle of the podcast. If you're not watching us on YouTube,
live shot,
live.
But
do you want a picture of us too?
But now that we're almost 2 years into this, it really holds true. And I'm pleasantly surprised all the time, whether it's something that they roll out and it's a big deal on the AI, or just last week, I had a new listing and Leo, the AI, said, Sarah, we saw you listed this house. Would you like us to make a flyer? And I said, sure, because I was rushing between appointments and needed to post something on Facebook. What pleasantly surprised me is I received an email from Leo basically saying, here's 15 different marketing tools that we've made for you, open house signs. And I just clicked the link and they were all made for me, which maybe I missed the message from Real that they rolled this out. But I'm constantly surprised on things that are truly making my life better. And in the 13 years at the previous brokerage, I don't think there was one time that I was excited about something.
Yeah, like, wow, there's growth.
Wow,
like they've rolled this
really
thing out.
great.
That's really neat.
I'm so excited about this fake CRM that you use. I mean,
totally.
Well, and
agree with
it's
you
funny
there.
you mentioned that because I meant to say this earlier. So there's an agent who recently made the switch to Real that was at our previous brokerage, Marty, and he was a hard sell. And not that we tried to sell him, we just we were friends with him. He would see what we were doing. We'd have conversations, and he just started getting more and more inquisitive. And he's one of his kind of a little bit of the fear was that even though it was a technology company and it was changing, to your point, Peter, and it was growing and he saw this possibility, that made him a little nervous, right? And it's funny because when he finally took the plunge, which we were so excited about that, but even if he is a Hawkeye fan, right, Brad?
Right.
But he
Go Hawks.
I say go Hawks too.
ILL.
Oh, jeez. Sarah, you got to chime in.
Hawks for sure.
See, I'm way outnumbered here.
But he said probably about a couple of weeks in, or maybe it was about a month in, I would say. And he's obviously loving it and he's killing it. He's having a stellar year this year. But he said, it's like, I just can't even, I knew it was different, but I can't believe all the things that I didn't know that I didn't know. And then he used the analogy, and it's so true because I feel like we all felt this, that first, month, 60, 90 days. He said, I feel like I need a drink of water and I went up to a fountain and it's just like a fire hydrant spraying in my face. Like, he's like, it's like, I can't drink fast enough. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, that's one of the ththings. One of the other topics that I want to cover really quickly is I'm sure a lot of people are interested. When leaving the old brokerage, were you nervous that you would lose a little bit of your local business, your past clients?
Business.
That's one of the deals about the Quad Cities. That's great about the Quad Cities is they like their local companies a lot. But have you noticed any difference, Sarah?
Actually, I've gained business. People that whether had some sort of falling out with the previous brokerage, I have a big listing that it was in the will that they could not use the previous brokerage. So he was happy that I left because of that reason. So if there has been a fallout or if someone chose a different agent because I left, I guess I didn't notice because I have sold more. So.
Yeah.
Peter?
Well, Brad tells the story of listing for, I'll call him J.A., that's his initials. But he interviewed Brad and he asked Brad why people used him. And Brad's answer was,
it was something like, I do this, I do that.
Yeah, and Jim shut him down right away and said, Brad, people use you because they like you. And people, if they like you, they don't care who you're with, as evidenced by people coming up to me and saying, hey, how's everything at XYZ Brokerage? I'm like, well, that's funny because I'm at Real. Oh, well, how's everything at Real? Right. They don't care who you're with. They're talking to you, and that's who they're going to use, not the brokerage firm. Yeah. However, if you can tell them all the great things about the brokerage firm that you're with and all the things that they're going to provide for you and your clients and help you succeed and your clients succeed, it is a much better story than having to keep that under wraps and still do a great job for your client, but not do it as easily and as smoothly as we do it now.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because the Quad Cities is like we talked about this. Quad Cities is a little bit almost like in a bubble, right? And I do feel like Brad and I felt when we would go to these, conferences and trainings outside of the area, we felt like almost we were doing our clients a disservice, right? Where we were, because it's just, they just do things the way they've always done things. They didn't change with the new things that were offered. And so that's been, I think something, and maybe you guys can speak to this, is like, I know we talked about that. Yeah. Like, how is it going to be? Are we going to lose clients? But yeah, we've not only gained clients, but the clients that we have that have chosen us are just amazed at all the different things that we are able to offer in the new Brokerage Real, because they're cutting edge, right? And like you said, they're always trying to make their agent's life better, but they're also always trying to figure out how to make the experience better for the client.
Yeah, there's no question about that. Going back there too, when I was making the calls, when we were making the transition to clients,
Clients that were not in contract.
Right. Well, no, when they were